We've all got backlogs, right? For some people, their backlog is full of movies or TV shows that they want to check out. Sometimes it's music that they're waiting to have time to sit down and really focus on the listening experience. Some people, like me, have lots of video games that they purchased over the years that they never got around to playing thanks to Steam sales and subscriptions. Part of the reason I wanted to start doing game reviews was because I was getting really embarrassed looking at my backlog and seeing games that I fully intended to play, but didn't because something new came along that grabbed my attention. So I finally decided to take on one such game that I was excited to pick up back in 2018? Jesus Christ. They're working on a sequel? Son of a... I finally decided to play 20XX by Battery Staple Games. 20XX is a roguelite that wears its inspiration, the Mega Man X franchise, on its sleeve. You can play as two characters, Nina or Ace. Nina has a long-range arm cannon that can be charged for additional damage, and Ace has a short-range sword weapon that can also be charged to deal additional damage. If you're familiar with the Mega Man X franchise, an easy way to think of it is that Nina is X and Ace is 0. As either Nina or Ace, the main gameplay is running a gauntlet against 8 bosses. Upon defeating the boss, you have the option to select from 3 boss fights where you can see both the boss you will fight and the stage that you'll need to traverse to fight the boss. As you play through a stage, you can find various power-ups that will last the rest of the run. Power-ups exist as augs, or augments, that provide stat boosts, and armor upgrades that can provide stat boosts and additional passive effects to your core gameplay mechanics. A few examples are leg parts that give a double jump, or an arm part that makes your charged attack destroy enemy projectiles. As you continue clearing levels and defeating bosses, the enemies, traps, and remaining bosses are powered up to prevent the game from becoming too easy as you gain strength throughout a run. This adds a level of complexity to planning which bosses to fight at specific points in a run. If a boss is really annoying to fight in later levels, it might be better for your run overall to take care of them earlier if you have the option. Bosses have powers that you can collect after defeating them, or you can choose a different reward in the form of currency or an aug. Certain bosses do have weaknesses to other bosses' powers, but that's not the only way that powers can be valuable. Certain boss powers interact with environmental hazards to make them less perilous. One example of this is the crystal shot from Eternal Star can crystallize disappearing platforms, making them permanent. This level of stage interaction adds another layer of complexity to choosing a reward for a boss, where if you know a particular stage hazard is coming in a later level, then it may be worth taking the boss power for that reason alone. Throughout the run, you also collect soul chips that can be spent in the starting hub to unlock permanent upgrades or new augs that you can find in future runs. Soul chips are lost when you start a new run, so you have to use them while you have them. There's also a time bonus that you can get by getting through the level. This is a nice incentive to get through a stage as quickly as possible, but there's a chance you might miss out on other items hidden throughout the level. Having both options available is smart in my opinion because it passively encourages player freedom by rewarding different playstyles. High octane with movement mastery, or more deliberate with a completion focus. There is also a narrative throughline that caught me off guard, in a good way, when I completed the game. I don't want to spoil anything, but I will say while there isn't any specific story dialogue, there are little cutscenes and context clues sprinkled throughout the game that hint to the overarching story. For a game that draws so much inspiration from an existing franchise like Mega Man X, it's important to make sure the experience is similar to appeal to fans, but not so similar that it fails to have its own identity. The controls in 20XX are tight and responsive, as you may expect if you are familiar with Mega Man X games. The game also, as expected, has a dash, and it's useful for crossing large gaps or even low profiling some attacks. Even though the maps seem to be procedurally generated to an extent with enemy and loot placement, there is still a good balance of slopes and situations where the dash is helpful if not necessary. While the gameplay of 20XX is very true to the source material it draws inspiration from, it does occasionally fall into the roguelike randomness trap. There can be situations where the randomness of the augs you find make or break the run. There have been runs where I found lots of speed and health boosts, but did very little damage. There have also been runs where I find only damage boosts, and as a result, the game feels far too easy. There have also been situations where not having a specific traversal upgrade has made a platforming section especially deadly, ending my run and leaving me with a bitter taste in my mouth. This is less an issue with 20XX and more of an inherent issue in roguelite games. In my opinion, being able to find a good balance so the random elements feel impactful, but never crippling is the hallmark of an excellent roguelite game. That's not to say games that fail to find this balance are bad, just look at how many popular roguelite games there are and will continue to be. I think a good way to offset the feeling of bad luck is to make sure the gameplay is so polished that the player still has fun even though they know the odds are stacked against them. The games that strike this balance are what end up being standout titles in the genre. While 20XX puts in an excellent effort, I don't think it quite gets all the way there. Sometimes enemies or terrain are so cramped that it doesn't quite feel fair, but it never happens so much that the challenge feels insurmountable. Because health drops are relatively easy to acquire, sometimes you just have to take the hit and push through. Another observation that I think is worth noting is that even though 20XX has a very small number of bosses, there's still a surprising amount of variety in the playthrough experience. The order can be made random based on player choice, and the later a boss is picked in the run, the more stages of difficulty the boss seems to go through as their health gets lower. Some bosses even have additional mechanics that come into play, such as the twin astrals reviving each other if you don't defeat both quickly enough. This provides an additional challenge. It means that while you may quickly identify boss patterns in early levels, you can still be surprised later in the run. While 20XX isn't necessarily a perfect game, it's still an absolute blast to play. The soundtrack is perfectly in sync with the intent, and the game does enough to stand out on its own without just feeling like a soulless Mega Man clone. I might be a bit biased as a huge Mega Man fan, but I think this game is definitely worth checking out. I'll also be keeping an eye on 30XX for when it's out of early access. It's been live since 2021, and if it's anything like its predecessor, I'm sure it'll be a great time. Thanks for watching, take care, and remember, keep having fun.